Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September Compliance Corner. For those of you who might be new to this program, this is a monthly video series that Heather and myself do to bring to you hot topics and updates within the legal world, within the compliance world, which might be new since we last spoke to you last month. And we look to deliver them in quick, concise updates of a period of about 20 to 30 minutes in order to have a quick stop and be able to be updated on those topics of note. So with that, we'll get started with this month's edition. And we have a few things on the agenda for. So you can see them in the slide here. First, we have a few CFPB items to cover. AI, artificial intelligence, continues to be a hot topic, and CFPB has released guidance on credit denials by lenders who are utilizing those tools. So we know there's lots of different ways that you're using AI, and this is one of those updates. Then we have just some threshold adjustments, the 2024 HMDA filing instructions guide, and some 1071 and port activity updates. Next, we have some FinCEN items, including a small entity compliance guide for beneficial ownership reporting and a new scam alert that FinCEN just put out. We'll wrap up with some FDIC items and a new ABA check fraud resource that we wanted to mention. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather for our first set of items from the CFPB.
Thank you, Scott, and hello, everyone. Happy September to you all. Scott mentioned there are several items that the Bureau has issued that we want to make sure are on your radar. The first one being guidance. We've got the circular number listed there for you on this slide, and it is certainly an item in our resource link for you to pull directly and read directly what the Bureau was saying. But with this guidance, similar to past guidance issued by the Bureau, they're posed a question and then they answer and provide their rationale for the answer. And so the question that was posed to the Bureau in this particular guidance is that when a bank is using AI or artificial intelligence or some other type of complex credit model, when they are looking to approve or deny a loan application, the user was wondering whether or not the pre-printed reasons or the checklist that is included in Reg B, the COA regulation, whether or not those pre-printed reasons could be used by the AI source in identifying what is the reason for the adverse action taken against the particular loan application applicant. And so, no surprise, the Bureau came back and said, no, we can't just use a checklist. We really have to use and provide to the customer the real reason why the application has been denied. And so helpful instruction there. I don't think anyone is surprised by the answer of the Bureau. And for even those that are not using artificial intelligence or some type of complex credit model where your denials are automatically decided through that model, it does give us a refresher of what needs to be included in the adverse action notice. And we've always had the requirement to make sure that we're clear with the reasons, the primary reason why the application has been denied. So take that update as well, that no deviation from what is expected by the Bureau when completing adverse action notices. We must be specific and make sure that we're not just checking a list or checking the pre-printed language within a particular notice, if in fact that's not the true reason why the application has been denied. Scott mentioned as well that the Truth in Lending annual adjustments for some of the thresholds have been released. We've not included those big lists here because it's quite a long laundry list for the various APOR fees and thresholds. But the link has been provided as part of this video, so you can pull it directly from the Federal Register. Note that all of the thresholds are going up. There's a 4.9% increase in the customer price index that is the basis for making the determination. And so you'll see an increase in all those areas. So it's probably the best nutshell that I can give there. So then on our second CFPB slide, as Scott mentioned, there has been the instruction guide for HMDA 2024 data has been released. And also released is an update to the Section 1071 FAQs. If those of you who are implementing Section 1071 are looking for resources, make sure that the FAQ is included in your resources. They have a number of different questions there. I do believe Scott, I think, also supports this position that the Bureau, in collecting their questions from their web-based email inquiry list serve, are putting together frequently asked questions from that pool of questions. And so we're seeing each of these different sections within the FAQ grow. And we have listed for you what questions have been revised or updated as of the last release. And it hits all the different sections of the FAQ. So just make sure you're always going back to that and seeing what's new as you work through Section 1071. So that brings us to the court cases that Scott mentioned, including Section 1071, kind of where are we at now? So as many of you know from our last conversation, we had the court case in Texas, which was the American Bankers Association and the Texas Bankers Association court case, where the court decided with the industry and had placed a stay on the implementation of Section 1071 for those members. Then more recently, we had a court case in Kentucky, and the court in Kentucky came to the same conclusion that it's more fair to the industry, because we can never recoup back those implementation costs, to stay the implementation of Section 1071 so that the CFB can't enforce compliance with that rule until such time as the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has a chance to hear the court case about the constitutionality of the CFPB's funding and issue an opinion about that particular court case. So the U.S. Supreme Court is having oral arguments on this particular court case matter early October. And then history shows that they have until about June of 2024 to issue an opinion. So until such time, the whole industry is kind of staying implementation for Section 1071 by those court orders. I will tell you that we need to have a congressional action to change the provision of Section 1071 within the Dodd-Frank Act in order to not have this rule going forward. And we're seeing those steps take effect here in Congress this week. The Senate is having a hearing on it and taking a vote on whether or not to revise or eliminate Section 1071. So stay tuned on that particular front, but we likely will still have some version of a Section 1071 rule to implement, just a matter of when. So we'll keep you abreast of that development. Also in Texas, there was a court case about the CFPB's UDAP examination manual. As you may recall, March of 2022, the CFPB released their examination manual in which they decided that taking a look at UDAP discrimination was going to be something that they were looking at, and that each institution had to monitor for discrimination in its products and in its practices, and that the CFPB could cite UDAP in a discrimination fact pattern. And the court said that is too far down the path of what Congress really gave you the authority to enforce. That UDAP is talking about unfair acts and practices, of which Congress has defined what unfair is and what acts are. And they left deception yet to be defined, but it went too far to stretch deception or unfairness to discrimination. So that resulted in the Bureau having to stand down their interpretation of discrimination underneath the UDAP. So we'll probably be seeing a rewrite by the Bureau of what they intend to be as supervisory examination underneath UDAP. So a lot of moving parts there, but I'm going to refer it back to Scott for our next few topics.
Sure, thanks, Heather. So moving on to our next slide with our FinCEN items. As many of you on this watching this video are likely aware of, starting in 2024, many business entities will be required to now report information about beneficial owners directly to FinCEN. So again, this is a requirement that's placed directly on businesses, many of which then are your customers. So we've then heard from some of you that you're getting questions or you're anticipating questions from your customers if you haven't gotten them already. And they're just generally wondering, and you're wondering, and your staff are wondering too, what to tell them or how to answer those questions that come in. And many of these are small business owners who might not be familiar with the requirements or might not know or have just heard something and come to you to ask what the deal is, what this is, what does it mean, where can they learn more? And so FinCEN has a great website with summaries, FAQs, and videos, and they have recently created this guide to add to those resources. So we wanted to point that out as an additional resource that's now on that website, along with the others that you can point your customers to should they have questions, or if you're looking to know more about it as well from bank's perspective. FinCEN has also released a new fraud alert this month related to virtual currency investment scams and this overall concept known as pig butchering. And that concept is one that actually applies to many different scenarios. And it's something that we've been hearing a lot about lately. It's on the rise and it's kind of becoming the new way that bad actors go about, scamming and defrauding individuals and really taking advantage of victims. And so kind of the way it works is rather than just kind of small time, taking what they can, where they can, building up these really long-term and sweeping schemes. And so the idea and where this comes from, the analogy is a bit gruesome, but the concept is fattening up a pig for butchering. And so what that means is that scammers now go to great lengths to create, again, these extensive relationships, and they come up with these elaborate stories to lead victims along, create ultimately this trusted partnership, and then again, fattening up the victim, getting everything ready, getting everything in place, learning about them as much as they can, about all their assets, all their finances, and then ultimately trying to take as much of that as they can from them. And that's resulting in some really huge losses, right? And again, these schemes, because there's so much involved, there's quite a bit of detail that goes into this convincing, and what they're building up in their victim's mind as to who they are. And so there's a few different ones. And again, this alert goes through all of them, many of them at least. But the primary one it relates to are these virtual currency investments, right? And so the idea is building up the victim to convince them that this is a legitimate investment that they can get involved in. And they go to great lengths to convince their victims of this case. So the guide goes through those methods. They go through how these bad actors contact the victims, what are some of their common methods, how you can spot them, and when they're reaching out, some common themes on how they manage to even introduce themselves and what the relationship is that they're trying to build. And as to what other alerts you can see. And they bring all of this together, as they usually do in these alerts, with bullet points for red flags. So take a look at that. Make sure to pass it along to your security officers if they're not on this video, or other staff at your bank who might benefit from it, to help staff spot them and help your customers as well. So you can educate your customers and let them know when you see this and what they can look out for. Then, of course, from a BSA side as well, there's SAR filing information and specific instructions should you spot any of that. On the next slide, onto our FDIC items, just a couple things to mention quickly here. The first is, in addition to FDICconnect, FDICconnect, of course, being the portal to exchange documents, information, other communications that we've been using for quite a few years now in consumer compliance and CRA examinations. And FDIC just announced this month that they're going to be adding a new component to it. A new tool is a good way to think about it, and that is the banker engagement site. However, do note that this will only be for consumer compliance and CRA exams, not for safety and soundness, however. So this banker engagement tool will only be available for those exams. And again, really what this is it's a communication platform. It's meant to go directly between the bank and the exam staff. So for exchanging information, maybe questions and answers, among others. Then lastly, we wanted to make you aware that FDIC did update its equal housing lender posters. This goes back to, I believe it was the beginning of the year when FDIC updated its name, address, web address, all that contact information on the posters. So FDIC updated that in the rule, but obviously the sample posters and the posters that they were distributing had not been updated yet. And so those posters are now, as of this month, updated. They're through the online catalog on the FDICconnect website. All of the new information is now available on those posters. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Heather.
Thanks, Scott. On the calls that we field from our members, we know that there are a lot of check fraud that goes on out there, and that we all struggle with trying to find the right person. And as we work through the investigation and collect all the data, that sometimes we're not hearing from the other institution on the other side of the equation. And we know that's frustrating. And here we wanted to make sure that you were aware of a tool that is meant to try to help reduce that frustration. We've reported on this a couple different times, so bear with us if you're already aware of it. But for those of you who aren't, please know that there's a resource out there, the ABA Check Fraud Claim Directory. This is something that the American Bankers Association has created. It can be used for and by ABA members and non-ABA members. So make note that this is something that's available to everybody. And the idea being that you as a financial institution would provide contact information and what other types of forms or data that you would need to have completed by another bank if another bank needs to file a claim. And that in reverse, if you need to reach out to another financial institution so that you too can file a claim, who to go to. So it's really meant to be a repository of information to try to cut down on the operational components of how do I get to the right person, what do I need to file, and vice versa. So we've included a link in the material resources to this video. Please go check it out. In order to gain access to the directory, you have to participate as a financial institution. So it's really a win-win for the industry, but please make sure that you're aware of that or get it to the right person, that they're aware of this opportunity for a directory. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that. But along with the idea of resources, we always want to make a pitch every time we do a video to make sure that you're aware of your own resources through the membership. And Scott and I work very hard to make sure that we have up-to-date and helpful compliance tools for you on our compliance resources webpage. So make sure that you're always out there checking. If you've got ideas that you would like for us to come up with, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to take a stab at a resource that you might need. Don't feel shy of calling. We're always happy to help answer questions via the phone. So please don't hesitate there. And to also take advantage of the account titling series that we now have out there on our education resources, as well as our in-house compliance training that we've been launched here in the last couple of months. So don't be shy, reach out. We're always happy to help where we can and create some new resources. Don't forget to check out the best practices library. If you need that password, reach out. We're happy to get that to you because we have many compliance resources there too in the compliance tab. So with that, we're always happy to see you via video, and we'd be happy to talk to you on the phones. So until then, we'll see you next time. Take care.